Hello everyone, this is Ashley Tucker from My Favorite Things. I have 2 cards to share with you today where I made some alcohol ink backgrounds. This is a technique that I don't do very often, but I really don't know why because I absolutely love the way that the backgrounds turn out when I do them. It really is a very easy way, in my opinion, to get a stunning looking background. So I laid down a craft sheet, a well-loved craft sheet, as you can see, so that I could protect my work surface because working with alcohol ink can get very messy. The paper that I'm using is called Yupo paper. It's a synthetic paper. It's not actually paper. It's more of a plastic. And if you're looking to get similar results to what I'm doing in this video, you definitely have to use Yupo paper. You can't really get the same results using regular paper. Please keep in mind, if you are working with alcohol inks, you're going to want to be in a well-ventilated room. Now, as for laying the inks down on the paper, there are many different ways that you can go about it, and none of them are necessarily the correct way. You really just got to kind of play with it and experiment and find what works best for you. I also find that while I'm in the middle of making the background, I will not be liking the way that it's looking. And then at the end, when it's all done, I'll love it. So don't get discouraged in the middle. Keep up with it. Like this one that I'm working on right now, when I was doing this part right here, I thought I ruined it and I hated it. But at the end, I really love the way that it turns out. You might have seen that I added a clear solution at one point over the top of my alcohol inks, and that was a blending solution to move the ink around a little bit more. You don't have to buy a blending solution though in order to do that. You can just use isopropyl alcohol, which is actually much cheaper, and it's pretty much the same thing. The air blower that you see that I'm using to move the ink around is actually something that you use for photography. If you're looking to get the same thing, it's a photography air blower that you use to clean your cameras of dust. I find that it's much better than using a straw to blow around the alcohol ink because using a straw is a little bit more dangerous because of the fumes. Now, I did end up making a ton of alcohol backgrounds because whenever I take out the materials, I always like to just have fun and play a lot, and I ended up making a ton of backgrounds. I did only show in the video 2 of them, the 2 that I used for the cards this time, so that the video wasn't super long, but I do have a lot more that I can play with in the future for different cards. Another thing that you might want to use when you're working with alcohol inks are some gloves. I didn't have any gloves left, so I did get some staining on my fingers and my nails. Next, I'm going to add some gold foil to the backgrounds. Now, I actually did let these backgrounds dry too long before moving on to adding the foil. They need to be not completely dry when you do this. They should be mostly dry, but still a little bit sticky in some areas. For the foil, you do want to make sure that it is the right kind of foil or else you won't be able to have it transfer. Make sure that the foil says transfer sheet on it somewhere or transfer. The one that I'm using is Deco foil, and that one works really well for me. And I do want to mention that you don't have to use a die cutting machine in order to get the foil to actually stick to your background. The only reason I use the die cutting machine is because, like I said, I let the backgrounds dry too long. So I really wanted to get a lot of pressure to try to get as much of that foil down as I could. But normally when I do this, I don't let it dry as long, and then I can just use my fingers and press down on the foil and it sticks really well. All right, now that my backgrounds are done, I'm going to move on to the sentiments. These sentiments come from the Blessings stamp set, and the really great thing about these 2 larger sentiments from the set are they have a coordinating die set that you can get to go with them to cut them out so that you can easily pop them up onto your card. I stamped both of these with VersaFine Onyx Black ink onto some white cardstock, and I lined up the dies over the sentiments, and then I ran it through my die cutting machine, and it cuts them out perfectly. I'm also going to stamp a couple of smaller sentiments to go with these larger ones. I'm going to take those smaller sentiments from the same stamp set, and I'm going to stamp them with the VersaFine Onyx Black ink onto some white cardstock. And then I grabbed some sentiment dies and I cut them out into strips. And now I'm going to pop up my background. I did cut down these backgrounds to be 4 by 6 inches, and I'm using a 5 by 7 card base. I added tiny little pieces of foam tape behind the 2 larger sentiments, and I also added foam tape behind my sentiment strips. I'm popping up the larger sentiments so that they're just a little bit higher than center of the card, and that's so that when I add the sentiment strip underneath them, the entire thing is going to look centered. And then as you can see, I have the sentiment strips cut on the side so that the flag is only on one side. And I'm going to pop those up right underneath the larger sentiment. I didn't want to embellish these cards too much because the background is so beautiful. I didn't really want to add a lot to it to take away from that background. But I thought that these raindrop embellishments were really perfect because once the glue dries, they are see-through. So it doesn't take away from the background at all, but it does add a little bit something extra to the card. The last thing that I did is I grabbed my glitter brush and I went over the large letters on the bigger sentiments, and then these cards are done and they are really beautiful. I don't think the camera does them justice. Those backgrounds are just stunning. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video and that it gave you some inspiration. If you've never tried working with alcohol inks before, I hope you'll give it a shot because they truly are really fun to work with and they make great backgrounds. I hope you have a wonderful day today, and I'll see you next time.